Welcome, Deronda here with Foods 101. I've received many requests on how to make a quiche Lorraine. Quiche Lorraine is a classic French dish that makes for a hearty breakfast, lunch, dinner, an excellent, delicious food during our quarantine time. The ingredients you're going to need is a cup and a half of whole milk. If you want to substitute this for half and half or whipping cream, you may. 1 cup of thinly sliced onions, 1/2 cup of cooked bacon crumbled, 4 large eggs, 1/4 teaspoon of ground nutmeg, this is optional, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, 1 cup of grated Gruyère cheese. I like to grate it myself because I don't like all that starch stuff on my cheese that I buy in a package already grated. And if you want to substitute this for Colby Jack or Monterey Jack, you may. For the crust part, now don't get intimidated. This is very simple and easy to do. Perfect for the taste buds and excellent on your pocketbook. The ingredients you're going to need is 1 cup of flour, 6 tablespoons of all vegetable shortening, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and 1 cup of ice cold water. So I'm going to show you how to make this crust first. In a medium mixing bowl, I'm adding the flour and the salt. I'm going to add half of that all vegetable shortening, like 3 tablespoons. With the pastry tool, I'm going to start cutting in the shortening to the flour and the salt. If you don't have a pastry tool, you may use a fork. Just go up on the sides of the bowl here. If you don't want to use a fork, use 2 knives to cut in the shortening with the flour back and forth. Our goal here is to get our flour and shortening mixture looking like cornmeal, like it'll be representing the texture of cornmeal. When it's looking like this, and you see the texture on that, how it's just represents cornmeal, we're going to now add the remaining shortening here into our flour, and we're going to cut this in until it represents pea-size pieces of shortening. Now you see how that looks. You get those tiny or big little pea textures of shortening throughout your flour. We're going to start adding 1 tablespoon of ice cold water at a time. You don't add the whole cup of ice water. We're just going to add a tablespoon at a time. Drizzle it around with the fork. We're going to toss it back and forth until the shortening and the flour comes together with our liquid. Need to add another tablespoon. Keep working it. I mean, this is a fun thing to do. You got a lot of time at home. Why not get out a bag of flour and your all-purpose shortening and start working on a homemade crust? Let me tell you, a homemade crust is going to taste a whole lot better than that store-bought crust. See how that's just pulled loose from the bowl? Now you know you're ready to roll out your dough. I've got my 9-inch pie pan sitting here off to the side. Give your surface a light dusting of your flour. Back with our dough, I'm going to make it into a ball. And if you want, you can push it back and forth from your hands to make sure you get any air bubbles out. Don't really squeeze it, just toss it back and forth. Roll it around, and then here on your surface, pat it down. Add a little flour here to the top. With a rolling pin, we're gonna go south, north, west, and east until we get our dough rolled out. Now, if you don't have a rolling pin, go ahead and use a large drinking glass that has a flat texture on the sides. If it starts sticking like that, we're going to add a little bit more flour here because you definitely don't want your dough sticking here to your surface. And we're going to continue just rolling it out. This looks perfect. At this point, if you're saying, can't I just go ahead and use store-bought pie dough? Yes, you may. You're not going to be punished for that. Now, I like to dust the excess flour off, and as you can see, I'm rolling it up on a rolling pin. Makes it a lot easier to handle. You get all that excess flour off there. Back with our pie pan, and at this point you want your oven preheated to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. Don't worry if it has a little crack there on the side. As you can see right there, we'll just go ahead and we'll pinch it back together. Now, I don't like to waste any of my dough, so I go ahead and I tuck it under like this. I go all the way around. I take my thumb and my point finger and I pull this back and bring this forward. So pull it back and bring it forward. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just remember, your homemade pie crust is your own creation. So they're not gonna have to be perfect and looking. And the more you practice, the better you'll get. If you wanna see how I'm doing that again, if you don't have a really good view there, I'm just pulling this back and I'm pulling towards me with this finger, and with my thumb, I'm pulling it towards the center here of our pie dough. And then you come over and do the same thing until you go all the way around the edge of your pie crust. I finished the edge of my pie crust, and I want to show you, if you don't want to take the time to do this, just take a fork and mash it along the edge here so you don't have to worry about any sort of design. But if you got a lot of time on your hands, why not? Next, we're going to prick the bottom with the fork, and then of course you want to get along the sides. And this is off to that 375-degree oven on the middle rack for the next 10 minutes. Use your timer and no peeking. Meanwhile, I've melted a tablespoon of bacon grease. Now if you don't want to use bacon grease, use olive oil or canola oil. And I'm going to add my onions, and they're going to saute for the next 6 minutes on medium heat or occasionally. And now's the time to grate that Gruyère cheese or Monterey Jack or Colby Jack, whichever one you like. I'm grating it here on wax paper. That way it'll make it a lot easier to pick up when we get ready to add it into our quiche Lorraine. Oh, and this is gonna be so delicious. I'm gonna go back over here and give my onions a little tossing. And that's looking fabulous. It's got some caramelization going. That's gonna be perfect. And back over here to grate the rest of my Gruyère cheese. Our 10 minutes are almost up on our pie crust. Here's our partially baked pie shell. I'm gonna put it here on a sturdy cookie sheet because it's gonna make it a whole lot easy to transfer this quiche Lorraine to the countertop, to the oven, and then from the oven back to the countertop. Add those caramelized, slightly caramelized onions to the bottom of our crust. Oh my gosh, that slight bit of brownness on these onions is gonna give this an incredible, tremendous flavor like you can't even believe. It just takes it to another level of flavor. And at this time, you want to turn your oven down to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Sprinkle the bacon here on the bottom. Boy, do the French know how to cook. We're going to add now half the Gruyère cheese. Add half of it right here on top of those onions and bacon, and I'm telling you, it's gonna be fantastic. Now we'll set this off to the side and I'll show you how to make the rest of the filling. I'm adding my eggs here into a large mixing bowl. I'm adding that nutmeg, the salt, whoops, that didn't want to come out of there, and the pepper with the whisk. We're gonna whisk these ingredients slightly until the egg yolks are well blended into the egg whites. We're going to add the milk. Or like I said, if you'd like to substitute this for half and half or whipping cream, you may. Make sure you try to get these little air bubbles out, and you can do that by lifting up your bowl. Keep tapping it until all those little air bubbles are gone. Or you can just let it sit for a few minutes and those air bubbles will disappear. See, it's like magic. No more air bubbles. Pour this over the bacon, onions, and cheese. Add your remaining cheese here on the top. If you want to make it a little bit more festive and add green onions or green chives here to the top of your quiche Lorraine, you may. I'm going to add a little bit more cheese just because I want to. This is off to that reduced, preheated 350-degree oven on the middle rack. And be careful while you're moving it because you see how jiggly it is. For the next 45 minutes, use your timer and no peeking. Quiche Lorraine has baked. And look how beautiful that is. I'm gonna put it here on a cooling rack. If you wanna make sure it's completely baked, stick that toothpick in. If it comes out clean, which it did, that means it's completely baked. If it had a little egg or milk on it, you'd want to put it back in the oven for another 5 minutes. I'll be back in 30 minutes. Gotta cut into this. Tell you what it's going to be like. I use a serrated knife with those little teeth there on the end, and I start from one side and I cut all the way across to the other side, and this is still really super warm. And then I go ahead and I cut it in quarters, and I cut the quarters in half. And I'm gonna go ahead, and there we go, our first piece of Quiche Lorraine. And look at that. Put it over here on a serving plate. My, oh my, look at that bacon. And look at those onions. This is going to be fantastic. Here we go. Wow. The Gruyere cheese. It tastes like a souffle, or almost like soft scrambled eggs. It's a hearty, delicious dish that will make anyone feel special. Fantastic. You won't go wrong with this homemade Quiche Lorraine with your homemade pie crust. It is absolutely fantastic and easy to make. I know you can do it. Give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, hit that notification bell to be the first to get my new YouTube food videos. Thanks a million for watching. Stay safe, and I'll catch you lovely people later.